Hi everybody, so I am coming at you tonight to talk about how to conjugate stem changing verbs in Spanish in the present tense. Before we go there, however, I want to make sure that you understand how your traditional AR, ER, and IR verbs work in Spanish. So I'd like for you to take a moment. There are a couple of traditional verbs here: hablar, to talk, to speak; comer, to eat; and escribir, to write. I want you to take a moment. I want you to pause your audio, and I want you to try to conjugate all of these verbs in their various forms, and let's see how you do. Okay, now that you've had a second to try these, it's very, very important that you know how to do these. So if you can't do these, then the stem changers are going to be 10 times more difficult for you. Okay, so it's really important you know how to do this. I'm going to just go through these really quickly with you. So as we look at the verb hablar, the first thing we do when conjugating any verb in Spanish is we take off either the AR, the ER, or the IR. So in this case, hablar was an AR verb. We're going to take off the AR. I like to tell my students in the in-person classes, we're next going to hobble on down, carry down the HABL. We're going to hobble on down. When we've done that, we have to go back and add our AR present tense endings: o, as, a, amos, ais, and an. So you end up with hablo, hablas, habla, hablamos, hablais, and hablan. So I talk, you talk, he talks, we talk, you all in Spain talk, and they talk. So this conjugation process, chopping off the AR and adding the O, as, a, amos, ais, and an. Next, we're going to take a look at the verb comer. So we take off the ER in comer. We have to come on down with the COM. If I want to say that I eat, we're going to say yo como, tú comes, él, ella, usted come, nosotros comemos, vosotros coméis, and ellos, ellas, ustedes comen. So you're adding those appropriate endings. O, es, hemos, es, en. If we were looking at the verb escribir, we would do the same thing. Chop off your IR, carry down the escrib all the way down, as you see in the blue, and then add our IR endings o, es, e. This time we have imos instead of amos, is instead of es, and en. So you can see all of those for you there. Now, that little review should help you with the stem changing verbs, which we're going to take a look at now. So there are different types of stem changing verbs in Spanish, and when I talk about a verb and a stem changer, if we were looking at hablar, for example, the AR in hablar, that's my ending, that's the end. But when you take off the AR, what you're left with, the HABL, that's my stem. So in the past, as you've conjugated verbs, all you've had to do is take off the ending, the AR, ER, IR, and throw some new endings on there. Now, you're not only changing the ending, you're also going to change the stem. So that means that something happens to this first part. Okay, so there are 4 different types of stem changers in Spanish, and we are going to begin by talking about E to IE stem changers. So let's pretend you had this verb querer. By the way, querer means to want. And let's say you don't know that stem changers exist. You've never heard of that. If you were going to conjugate querer, you would start by, hopefully you're saying take off the ER. That's the first thing we're going to do. Now that we've done that, we're going to carry down the querer part, Q-U-E-R, and add our endings, which for an ER verb are o, es, e, hemos, es, and en. Well, that's not entirely right because we've changed our ending. We took the ER and added O, S, A, amos, es, and we changed the ending, but we haven't changed the stem. So something now has to happen to the Q-U-E-R, the querer part. Well, querer happens to be a stem changing verb from E to IE. So the interesting part about this process is that for the nosotros and vosotros forms, nothing happens here. They remain as queremos and querréis. But for your other forms, the yo, tú, él, ella, usted, and ellos, ellas, ustedes, something does happen to those. So I put nosotros and vosotros here in green because we know we're good to go. Those are correct. But the others are wrong. We have to change our stem. We have to change the E to an IE. So instead of quiero, you get quiero. Instead of quieres, you get quieres. Instead of quiere, quiere, and quieren. These two are right, queremos and querés. So the nosotros and the vosotros never change. The stem part never changes on those. They remain the same. And I'll show you a way to remember this in just a moment. But first, this verb querer is a very commonly used verb in Spanish, one that you will see a lot. So I have a little YouTube video that I think will help you to remember this verb. So let's take a moment and watch this short little video clip together.
Yo quiero Taco Bell.
So this guy in his Taco Bell is very impressed by this Chihuahua that can speak in Spanish. So again, instead of saying quiero, he said yo quiero Taco Bell. I want some Taco Bell. Yo quiero Taco Bell. The big takeaway here is that with your stem changing verbs, they do not change in the nosotros or the vosotros. They only change when we're inside of what we refer to as the boot. So if you look here at the yo, tú, él, ella, usted, and ellos, ellas, ustedes forms, which I've highlighted in yellow, these sort of begin to form a boot or a shoe. So sometimes people like to refer to these stem changers as boot verbs or shoe verbs because they form a shoe. And inside of that shoe, the stem change happens. The E changes to an IE. But outside of the boot, the E does not change. It just remains as an E. It does not become an IE. Okay, so I have another verb here that I'd like for you to try that works in a similar way. This verb is also an E to IE stem changer, as I've told you here in parentheses. And this is the verb empezar, which means to begin or to start. Okay, so I want you to take a moment. I want you to pause this video and give this verb a try for me. Okay, now that you've had a moment to try, empezar, we begin, hopefully, as you know, by chopping off the AR. We carry down the stem that is left over, the empez, E-M-P-E-Z. Next, we're going to throw in our endings, so o, as, a, amos, ais, and an, because this is an AR verb. And we know that the nosotros and the vosotros do not have to change. They're perfectly great. Empezamos, we begin, and empezáis, you all begin. Nothing has to happen there because they're outside of the boot. But the yo, tú, él, ella, usted, and ellos, ellas, ustedes forms, they do have to change. This E has to become an IE. And people always ask me, but Mr. Harrison, there's two E's. Oh my gosh, how do I know which one to change? Well, you're never going to change the very first letter, okay? So you can just ignore that. It happens to be the one in the middle of the verb. So you get empiezo, empiezas, empieza, and empiezan. Okay, the others stay the same with no stem change. They just remain as an E. But these are changing to an IE because, as you can see, these fall within the boot, whereas the nosotros and vosotros do not. Okay, so hopefully this is starting to make a little sense. That covers our E to IE verbs. I want to give you just one more of these to try, just to make sure you got it, okay? So one more time, please pause your audio, and we're going to give the verb pensar a try. Pinsar means to think, like I think that, you think that. So pause your audio, give this one a try. Okay, now that you've had a moment to try these, as you know, we're going to begin conjugating by chopping off the AR. We're left with the PENS, pince. Okay, we need to go through and add our endings. So o, as, a, amos, ais, an. We've thrown those on there. We know that this is a stem changing verb from E to IE. We know we don't have to do anything with the nosotros or the vosotros because they're not inside the boot. We're going to change our E to an IE everywhere else. And we get pienso, piensas, piensa, pensamos, pensáis, and piensan. Okay? Hopefully you're feeling pretty good about those. So E to IE stem changers, like the verbs that you just saw, querer, pensar, empezar, those are E to IE stem changers. As I told you before, there are 4 kinds of stem changers in Spanish, though. So you know how to do E to IE now. Let's look at another type of popular stem change, which is the O to UE stem changer. Okay, so we're going to start with a basic verb like poder. Poder means to be able to, like, man, I'm able to speak Spanish and you're able to play basketball and she's able to sing really well. So poder is to be able to. We're going to start conjugating poder by chopping off our ER. We're going to carry down the pod, P-O-D, all the way down. And then we're going to add our ER endings in this case. So o, es, e, hemos, es, en. Just like with our E to IE stem changing verbs, nothing happens in the nosotros or the vosotros because those are not inside of the boot. However, everywhere else, the O in poder is going to change to a UE, and therefore you end up with puedo, puedes, puede, podemos and podes stay the same, and pueden. Okay, and again, this is because you can form a boot here when you're not including the nosotros and the vosotros there because they're not inside the boot. Okay? Puedo, puedes, puede, podemos, podes, pueden. Right? Hopefully, starting to make some sense. I have one for you to try here. This is the verb encontrar, which means to find or literally to encounter. So if you would, please take a moment, pause your audio, and give this one a try. All right, now that you've had a second to try those, we're going to start by chopping off our AR like always. We're left with encontr, E-N-C-O-N-T-R. Next, we're going to throw in our AR verb endings because this is an AR verb. Encontro, encontras, encontra, encontramos, encontráis, and encontran. Well, that's not totally right because we know that the nosotros and the vosotros are good. They don't change because they're not inside the boot. But everywhere else in encontrar, our O must change to a UE. So here inside the boot, we see encuentro, encuentras, encuentra, encontramos, encontráis, and encuentran, changing the O to a UE. All right, we're making progress. We've covered our E to IE stem changing verbs. We've covered now our O to UE stem changing verbs. Let's take a look at the third type of stem change in Spanish, which is just an E to I stem change. Now, you got to be very careful because some verbs in Spanish change from E to IE, like querer that we saw earlier. However, some verbs only change from E to I. So people always say, well, Mr. Harrison, how do I know which one changes? How am I supposed to know? Well, you just kind of have to memorize these. I am going to give you a cheat sheet, which will be on Canvas that you can use to help you. But in this case, your E is going to change just to an I. Let's start with a simple verb like pedir. Pedir means to ask for, or in some cases to order, like I'm going to ask the waiter to bring me some water, or I'm going to order some arroz con pollo, or whatever. So in this case, pedir is an E to I stem change. We're going to begin by chopping off our IR in pedir, carry down the ped part, P-E-D, all the way down. This is an IR verb, so let's throw our IR verb endings on there. O, es, e, hemos, is, and en. As you can probably guess, the nosotros and vosotros are good to go. They're totally cool, nothing wrong there. We can leave those alone because they are not inside the boot. Everywhere else, though, we need to change our E to just an I. So we get pido, pides, pide, pedimos, pedis, and piden. All right, hopefully that makes sense. I have one for you to, oh, and really quickly, again, you can see highlighted there in yellow, you see your boot, whereas the others are not in the boot. Okay, I want you to try the verb servir for me, which is also an E to I stem change. So take a moment, pause your audio. All right, so just like all of our other verbs, we're going to chop off our IR in servir. We're left with serve, S-E-R-V. We need to add our endings. This is an IR verb, so o, es, e, hemos, is, en. Hopefully you know that two of these are correct, and that is the nosotros and the vosotros that do not change. Our others, we need to take our E, change it to an I, and we end up with sirvo, sirves, sirve, servimos, servis, and sirven. All right, so now you know three kinds of stem changes in Spanish. You know the E to IE, the O to UE, and the E to I. Our final stem change in Spanish is a U to UE stem change. There's actually only one verb in the entire Spanish language that has this stem change from U to UE, and that is the verb jugar. which means to play, specifically to play a sport, jugar. So, as we look at jugar, just like all of our other verbs, we're going to take off our AR, carry down the hug part, the JUG, throw on our AR endings, o, as, a, amos, ais, an. Just like all of our other stem changing verbs, the nosotros and vosotros are correct, totally unaffected because they're not inside the boot. Our other forms, we must take the U, change it to a UE. So we end up with juego, juegas, juega, jugamos, jugais, and juegan. All right. So I put on this slide that it's time for a cheat sheet and that you can see Canvas. I will make sure to upload my little stem changing verbs cheat sheet, and I made this for the Spanish 1000 class. These are just very common stem changing verbs that you see in Spanish. This is not every single verb in the whole language, but it's very, very common verbs that you will see in this course. So here are some from E to IE, and I've given you the verb. I've highlighted the E that changes, and I've told you in parentheses what these mean in English. Same thing for your E to I stem changers and your O to UE. And then at the bottom, I just put some general verbs that you should know from past chapters like ser, estar, tener, ir, and gustar. And you can see these. This will be on Canvas for you, so you'll have that to reference. Okay, so as we keep looking, I've given you a couple of slides here, and you'll have to do something like this in my Spanish lab this week. So we mix them all together. You don't know which one is an E to IE, which one is an E to I, which one is an O to UE, or which one is an O to U. You kind of just sort of have to memorize or consult your cheat sheet. Okay, so let's take a look here. Number one tells us that Lauren pensar que el vestido rojo es feo. So Lauren to think that the red dress is really ugly. Okay, so Lauren thinks the red dress is ugly. Well, we need to know what kind of stem change Pinsar has. And I will tell you in all of these activities, these all have stem changers. Okay, so they have some kind of stem change. You have to know, well, is Pinsar an O to UE stem changer? I don't think so because there's no O. So we can cross that out. Is it a U to UE stem changer? Probably not. It doesn't have a U in there. So that allows us to narrow it down to two. It's either an E to IE stem change or it's an E to I. So if you consult your cheat sheet, you will know that Pinsar has a stem change from E to IE. So we're going to end up with Pinsar. I need to chop off my AR to conjugate. And in this case, I'm talking about Lauren or she. So I'm going to use my bottom left box, the ella form, and add an A. So I should end up with Lauren piensa que el vestido es feo. All right, number two tells us that ella preferir el vestido negro. So she thinks that red dress is ugly, but she prefers the black dress. So we're going to take the verb preferir, to prefer, and we need to conjugate it. So first we need to know what kind of stem change it has. Again, you can ask yourself, is it an O to UE? Nope, doesn't have an O. Is it a U to UE? Nope, there's no U in there. That means it has to be either an E to IE or an E to I. In this case, preferir, if you consult your sheet, preferir is an E to IE stem changing verb. And if you consult your sheet, you'll see that I've underlined the second E that changes. So my second E in preferir is going to change to an IE. So I get preferir. I need to chop off my IR. And I'm saying that Lauren, that she prefers. So again, my bottom left box for an IR verb, you know that your ending should be an E. So Lauren prefiere el vestido negro. Okay, I want you to take a moment, and I'd like for you to try numbers 3, 4, and 5 in this same process. Okay, now that you've had a second to try these, number 3 tells us that Janet dice que costar mucho. So Janet says that something cost a lot. In this case, start by asking yourself, what kind of stem change does costar have? Well, is it an E to IE? There's no E. That also means it's not an E to I. Okay, so we've narrowed it down to 2. It's either a U to UE or an O to UE. Well, there's no U. So it has to be an O to UE stem change. Now, where this is a little ambiguous in this sentence, if you weren't reading it in the context of the whole paragraph, it probably wouldn't make sense. But Lauren thinks that the red dress is ugly. She prefers the black dress. And Janet says that blank cost a lot. So we're referring back to the dress, the black dress. She thinks that it cost a lot. So it, as you recall, probably from a previous lecture, it is our bottom left box in Spanish, that he, she, it box. So in this case, costar, I'm going to go ahead and change my O to a UE. I get cuestar. If I chop off my AR to say that it costs for my bottom left box, I'm going to add back an A. Janet says that cuesta mucho. Okay, number 4, Meg and Grayson repetir los comentarios de Janet. So Meg and Grayson, they kind of echo Janet's comments. They agree. They repeat her comments. Repetir, as you know from your sheet, is an E to I stem changing verb. It is my second E that changes to an I. So I can get repetir in this case, if I can type. Repetir. I next need to chop off my IR in repetir. And as I've done that, I need to decide about Megan and Grayson. Well, would Meg and Grayson be I, you, he, she, we, or they? Meg and Grayson would be they. So my bottom right box, I need to add an E in. Meg y Grayson repiten los comentarios de Janet. All right, and our last one. Profesor Arizón poder hablar español. So Professor Harrison can speak Spanish. We know that poder is an O to UE stem change, as you saw earlier. I can go ahead and get pueder, chop off my ER, and Professor Harrison would be he, our bottom left box. We need to add back an E. Okay, so this is just some practice here. A little bit of additional practice for you on these stem changing verbs. If you feel like you got the hang of it, feel free to go ahead and fast forward to the next part of the grammar video. But if you need a little more practice, we'll go over these, and you might see these on a test or something on My Spanish Lab, who knows. So number 1 gives you a sentence, yo, no, and it gives you 2 different verbs, either entender, to understand, or perder, to lose, cuando el profesor habla en español. So I do not understand when the professor talks in Spanish, or I do not lose when the professor talks in Spanish. Obviously, entender, to understand, is our better option. We can cross out perder. We need to know what kind of stem change the verb entender has. If you consult your handy-dandy cheat sheet, you know that entender has a stem change from E to IE. Oh my gosh, but Mr. Harrison, there's 2 E's. How do I know which one to change? Oh no! Well, it's never the first E that changes, so it can't be that one. We're already taking off our ER on the end, so it has to be this middle E that changes. So we get entiender, with that middle E here, changing to an IE. Entiender. We're next going to chop off our ER. We said this was the yo form. I don't understand, so I need to add my yo form ending for an ER verb, which is an O. So I get entiendo. Let's do one more together. Number 2. Nosotros blank, and your options are servir or pensar que la clase es difícil. So we serve that the class is difficult, or we think that the class is difficult. Obviously, we think sounds better, so let's chop out servir. We need to know that pensar has a stem change from E to IE, so we get piensar. We need to chop off our AR, and we think, so I bet we add amos, right? Is it piensamos? It is not. Oh my gosh, do you remember why? Well, if you go back up and consult what we referred to earlier with pensar as an E to IE stem changing verb, you will see that we do not change this E to an IE everywhere. In fact, it doesn't change in the nosotros form because it was not in the boot. So you got to be real careful with that, since in this case, pensar, the nosotros form does not fall in the boot. Instead of piensamos, we should have just pensamos. So the E does not need to change to an IE in that case. All right, so one last time, take a moment, pause your audio, and give numbers 3, 4, and 5 a try for me. All right, now that you had a second to try these. Number 3, mis amigos repetir estudiar esta noche. Or mis amigos preferir estudiar esta noche. So either my friends repeat to study tonight, or my friends prefer to study tonight. I believe prefer makes more sense, so we'll chop off the ER. Preferir has a stem change from E to IE. You know from your cheat sheet, it is your second E that changes. So we get preferir. I'm going to chop off my IR. And to say my friends, they prefer, we're going to add an EN. So mis amigos prefieren. Prefieren estudiar esta noche. Number 4. ¿Cuándo empezar tú a estudiar para el examen? ¿O cuándo pedir tú a estudiar para el examen? Well, when to begin you to study to the exam, or when to order you to study for the exam. So it makes more sense to say when did you begin. So we're going to take empezar. We know that it has a stem change from E to IE. It's the second E that changes. We get empiezar. Chop off your AR. And in the to form, we need to add an AS on the end. Empiezas. When did you begin to study for the exam? And our last one, number 5. Tú siempre poder en la cafetería. You are always to able to in the cafeteria. Or tú siempre almorzar en la cafetería. Well, it makes more sense to say that you always eat lunch, almorzar en la cafetería. So we can chop off poder. We know that almorzar is not an E to IE stem change because it doesn't have an E, which means it also can't be an E to I. It can't be a U to UE either because there's no U. In this case, almorzar is an O to UE stem change. We're going to take our O, go ahead and put our UE in. We get almuerzar, chop off our AR, and we need to add in the to form an AS to say that tú siempre almuerzas en la cafetería. All right, hopefully you are feeling much better about these stem changing verbs in Spanish.